Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It has turned 4:30, so we will make a start on this evening's Cabinet agenda. Item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. Everyone in this room has been here before and heard the evacuation procedure, so I don't propose to read it word for word, but needless to say, please leave through the door you entered and assemble outside the old bank on the opposite side of the road. Item 2 is to receive apologies. All of Cabinet are present. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest which aren't already printed on the agenda? I'll take that as a no. In which case we move on to item 4, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Is everyone happy that I sign them as a true and accurate record of the last meeting? Okay, thank you. That leads us on to agenda item number 5, which is public consultation. I have been made aware of public speakers on 5 items, which are item 6, planning procurement software, Mrs. Condacor and Mr. Smith. Item 8, the general fund budget, Mrs. Condacor. Item 9, the housing revenue account, again Mrs. Condacor. Item 10, the capital budget, Mrs. Condacor, and item 15, which is the regeneration projects update, Mrs. Condacor. I would remind all public speakers that they should stick to the topic in question and not veer off from the subject. If they do, I will interrupt and pull you back to the topic, and if you persist, I will move on to next business. So that moves us on to agenda item number 6, which is planning procurement software. Councillor Smith.
The planning department has for some time been implementing a restructure and commercialisation programme, which is already starting to pay dividends, not just in terms of income, but also in the attraction and retention of first-class planning officers. The next step in this programme is to modernise our planning IT software to realise the full potential of what we've put in place so far. Civica Flair is the system used to manage all our planning and land charges admin, and it's become a piece of legacy software that doesn't allow for growth, commercialisation, or take advantage of the massive leaps in software development made over the last 20 years. It's also incompatible with newer software, which restricts its integration with other systems as well as our website. This creates not just inefficiencies in working practice, but negatively impacts on customer experience, and at its worst is a potential single point of failure for the planning and land charges team. Procuring a newer and more up-to-date software system for planning and land charges would allow for an enhanced and modern planning service which can use the software to improve customer experience, staff attraction and retention, and officer time efficiencies. It would also allow for the planning and land charges team to push for a fully commercialised service where income generation becomes a normal part of the process. As a team, we've come a long way in the last couple of years, and the benefits of that are already starting to show. However, a new planning software would enable us to have a fully commercialised planning service capable of not only meeting our current need, but exceeding current standards, and pushing on to create an exceptional and regionally successful planning service which is not only self-funding but income generating. So I move the recommendation as printed, Chair.
Second that from the Chair. We have 2 public speakers on the item. Mrs. Condacor.
Thank you. I don't really want to say an awful lot. I mean, it's long overdue for, as a member of the public who regularly deals with planning issues and comments on applications, etc. It's very archaic compared to, for example, our neighbours Hinckley. I was just a bit surprised to see that it says, as part of the procurement process, MBBC will be investigating with other local authorities software they use and how that supports their process and risk management implications. I would have thought that would actually already have been done, and as soon as you got the go-ahead, boom, you'd be buying it and getting it into use. So that's a little bit disappointing. I hope that has actually been done and isn't just going to be part of the procurement. Thank you.
Condicle. Any points of clarification to Mrs. Condicle? Is it clarification? Okay, Councillor Smith.
Work has actually already taken place, so we have a direction of travel.
That moves us on to Mr. Smith.
The procurement of software to make this corporation's work easier and the lives of the borough, people who live here, worse, is a waste of public money, as ever. This corporation, over the past 50 years, has ruined the borough, helping you to push central government building plans on the borough. Last year proved it, the amount of pushback you had against the building programmes in this borough, and you just ignored it and keep pushing central government.
Mr.
You're on about us paying for more software so you can push more central government building programmes in the borough.
This is nothing to do with central government. This is
Yes,
about
it is.
local government.
You run by them.
Please get
It's a
back to
central
the
government
Mr. Smith, either get back
building
to
programme.
the item in question, or I'll move on.
It's a central government software, like I say, nationalising it, so that central
Mr.
government
Smith, I won't
policies
warn you
push.
again.
We
Get
need
back to
real
the point.
people in here from the borough. This corporation's bankrupt anyway, so when it gets wound up,
Okay, Councillor Condacor, I believe you wish to
you
speak.
get wound up and you're finished.
Everyone agrees we need new software. There is so many things wrong with the current software, particularly if there is, say, an interesting application in Wellington. You cannot actually link to a document. You have to tell people to go to our website and type in a 5-digit or 6-digit number. So I do hope the new software has a nice permanent links to each application, and also not compress the diagrams so much, because we have lots of PDF diagrams, for example, where they've been so compressed that you can't actually read the contour lines and the house numbers and anything on them. So it is a positive step, and I hope we'll have a demonstration of whatever you choose at scrutiny, or maybe a link to the people on the right scrutiny panels, so we can actually see and comment how it will be implemented, because we need to do it. Our current system is decades and decades old, but we also need to get good value for money. So I do hope we are looking at the costs and the licensing fees, and also making sure we're not trapped in it. So whatever it is, it's open source, so that if that operator goes under or things change, the actual database we've created for that list of planning applications can then move on to the next incarnation of planning software in a decade to come.
No. Any other non-cabinet member? No? Anything to come back on?
No, I'm happy to move on.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case, we'll move to the vote on the recommendations. All those in favour, please show. Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item 7, which is Dog Control Order, Public Space Protection Order extension. I believe this is you again, Councillor Smith.
It is, and the Council introduced the current public space protection order relating to dog control back in March 21. This PSPO created offences relating to dog failing, dogs on lead in specific places or by direction, and dog exclusion. This type of order can be made for up to a maximum of 3 years, and the current order is due to expire in March. However, orders can, at any point before they expire, be extended for a further period of up to 3 years. The current order does everything we need it to do, so there's no requirement to amend it at this point. So the proposal is simply for Cabinet to authorise extending the order without any changes. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gutteridge, thank you. There are no public speakers on this item, so I'll move to non-cabinet members. Councillor Condacor.
In Wellington, where lots of people love walking their dogs, and lots of people saying, well, should that dog be on the lead or whatever. I think we do need to refresh our signs. A lot of them were stick-on labels and lampposts and street furniture like GP boxes or whatever, and they have all faded or that street furniture is not there. So can I ask when this goes back in, we actually do have a bit of a refresh of notifying people with the street furniture, particularly where dogs should be on leads. Thank you.
Application. No, Councillor Smith.
The same issues in other places, so it's currently being looked at.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other non-Cabinet member? No? Anyone wish to speak on the item? No, in which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 8, which is the General Fund Budget 24-25. Councillor Croft.
Accustomed to move budget papers at the Cabinet without comment because, unfortunately for everyone here, I'll be presenting them in my usual manner later on this evening, so I shall move the report as written.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Croft, and I'll second that from the Chair. We have one public speaker on the item, which is Mrs Condacor.
I was concerned when there's talk about recruitment freezes, because that just puts pressure on the remaining staff and less likely to retain good experienced people, and it's very short term because you end up having larger agency spends and things like the audit fees. I presume that's because we've not really got enough finance staff to actually get it all, going through the system properly. So sort of relying on not taking on staff is sort of rather, I don't know what the right word is, but problematic as far as I'm concerned. And it's something I've raised time and time again, even with the previous administration. And I've never seen actually any strategy as to how you're trying to overcome that. So that'd be nice to see it. In terms of the budget itself, I mean, obviously it is terribly tricky to have to try and balance everything. There just seem to be some strange anomalies. For example, on the sort of increase in fees for burials and all that sort of thing, they all seem to have whatever percentage increase it is. And then, but if it's an oversize, which I presume needs digging a wider hole, that's not got any increase. So it just seems, a bit odd. I don't understand why it's not across the board for everything that involves, cemeteries and things. Obviously we haven't got any casinos or whatever in the borough and things, but there seem to be no increase in any of those sort of fees or betting premises and things, and those are things that you sort of don't want to be encouraging. So actually, if someone does apply for something like that, actually charging them more seems to me a logical thing, and yet there's been no increases there. And the income from car park fees, the actual ultimate net income to the council seems to have reduced considerably yet again, and yet there's no change proposed. There's no smarter strategy for people who don't want to have 3 hours in town, particularly on a Sunday. Strange things like 50 plus further discount on yearly season ticket at Harefield Road. I don't understand why that should be. So there are quite a lot of questions that it raises, but I don't know when I can get answers to those because I can't answer the questions at full council. So.
Of clarification? No. I would just answer a couple of those questions so that it is clear for our friends in the press. The audit fees have not been set by us. That is set as part of a national contract. It has been a national issue about the increase of audit fees across the board. It's not something that we particularly welcome because it is an increased pressure on our budgetary position, but that is as it is. We have no control over that. And with a number of fees and charges, there is an issue about legislation, about what we can or can't increase. So in particular, some licensing fees, for example, we're not allowed to make a profit over a 3-year cycle, and they have to look at the past 3 years' worth of information. That is one particular example, and some are set by statute in absolute terms. So it's not always at our discretion. I can't bring you back in, but I'm trying to be helpful Mrs Condacor, and answer some of the points you've made, because there are some issues where we would like, as a local council, to be able to actually charge what it costs us. For example, in planning fees, those are also capped at a certain extent, regardless of what work it costs us. We can't charge more than is set by government. There has been an uplift, but not to the point where it covers our costs. So I'm trying to explain some of your points, Mrs Condacor. So I will go now to any non-cabinet member. Councillor Condacor.
This meeting got postponed by a week, and that people had no notice of it being postponed by a week till the legal minimum time. We really need to discuss budgets better, and lots of stuff in this budget is already baked in because you signed various contracts. I understand. And there is an almighty cliff, if you look at your budget, particularly on Appendix 2, of interest charged. We are going to pay almost £1 million interest next year. The year after, that's going to go up to almost £2 million. We need to be more careful. We cannot, as a council, pay these vast amounts of interest. And a lot of the charges, they're very uneven. You're really attacking people in mobile homes when the mobile home sites are actually making a profit. So maybe someone could explain that one. Thank you, Chair.
Any points of clarification? No? Well, with mobile home sites, there has been some significant investment in those mobile home sites under Councillor Golby's remit. And also, if you look at what we actually charge, it is considerably cheaper than a lot of other accommodation within the borough. So I think they actually get a very good deal. Any other non-cabinet member? No? Anything that cabinet wishes to come back on? No? In which case we will move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to the HRA budget, 24-25. Councillor Golby, you're taking that one first, aren't you?
As Councillor Croft, there's going to be enough discussion on this later, so I'll move the report as printed.
Councillor Croft, thank you. Mrs Condacor, you're a public speaker on this item.
Yeah, a bit confused because I think some of it's on the capital, but on the HRA and things. So apologies if I mess things up by getting bits confused. And also some of my numbers, because when I went online this morning, because you changed your website, I couldn't initially download any of the bits. They did appear later on, but then obviously I didn't have as much time to go through it all. So there was, again, underspend on staffing, and that always then has a knock-on effect because there also seemed to be a massive reduction, in the repairs and maintenance of homeless hostels. And it also said shops and other. I don't really understand why that, is in housing. I'd say some of it is probably on the capital side, but on the HRA, so I don't know where I can say that and things. But there was like £700,000 for level access showers, and that seemed an awful lot of money. So it'd be interesting to know how many that actually involves, because I can't imagine there needs to be that many per year, because once they've gone into houses or flats or whatever, they're there. And there was also a number of the conversion of the homeless hostels was still not done, and it seemed to just be moving forward and forwards, but I don't know which hostel this is. So that's all I can say, because my notes are too scrappy. Sorry.
Points of clarification. There's just one point from me about the shops, because it did surprise me when I became portfolio holder, because I thought they're in my portfolio and they're actually in Councillor Golby's. That's usually where there are flats within the HRA built on top of them. So I think there's a couple in Bedworth, for example, near the town centre, where there are shops underneath, but then all of it is HRA, or was when it was constructed. And so they fall within the HRA remit, which surprised us too, but it's just a quirk of the system. So just to explain that point as well. Any other non-cabinet member? Oh, sorry. Yes, it's already going to be a long evening, Councillor Condacor. Non-cabinet members, Councillor Condacor.
Thank you. There's not always so much in the HRA, but there's a lot of money in it, effectively, as a budget. It's actually bigger than the general fund normally. And I'm always concerned about the lack of transparency about the various hostels we've got. And we've obviously got the new one at St Bernadette's, which I think is the one, Benedict's, which is 196, 198 Stockingford. And I know in the outturn stuff, we were looking at under occupancy of various places. So I'm not sure if we've got an outturn figure or an estimated outturn figure to actually see how these are performing. Because obviously they were supposed to save us lots of money by actually providing accommodation cheaper than bed and breakfast, etc. But it's useful to know what the void rates, etc. are. I will also mention garages again. I know someone's going to measure 8 times and cut once. But empty garages are a lost asset. It's like airline seats that fly empty. Yeah, you do need to look at these things, because if they're sitting there, it is something that can be earning some money or being taken out of use. So I do hope we're progressing somewhere, getting the 500 or 600 empty garages in use, particularly because I believe there are about 300 or 400 people on the waiting list for a garage. So it is something where, although we've made progress on income by hiking the fees, there is more to do if we have a plan one day.
Points of clarification? No. Any non-cabinet, other non-cabinet member? No. Anyone from cabinet wish to comment? No. In which case I'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 10, which is the capital budget 24-25. Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seem to be completely being lost, particularly the museum. And Wheat Street, there seems to be a small amount that's sort of been moved into the next year, but not the full cost. So is that going to happen? Same with Corporation Street, Queen's Road Junction. I mean, these were all sort of key bits that we were told were going to happen as part of the transforming Nuneaton, the roads bit. And yet it just seems to have disappeared into nothing. So I don't know how much has actually been spent and for which we're seeing absolutely nothing, because all these projects have been in the planning. I mean, I certainly know for the Wheat Street thing, from the cycle point of view, we've had meetings. Someone's been working on it at county for several years. Goalposts kept being moved and things. So there's been an awful lot of money spent with absolutely nothing to see for it. £1.7 million already spent on Bedworth Physical Activity Hub, and yet we've got absolutely nothing to show for that whatsoever. So that is really concerning. Also with changing places, I saw that money had been spent, but I thought it was going to be in the extended museum, the one in Nuneaton. So where have we got the changing places things? Because I honestly don't know. And also some things like Safer Streets. I know that was coming from a grant from government and things, but the amount that has actually been spent seems to be not quite double, but not far off double. So why, if we've got a grant for so much for a particular thing, is that amount actually not getting, the spend is way above it and things? Because surely if you're getting a grant of just say 100,000 for something, then you've got 100,000 to spend, not 120,000. So that is of concern.
Points of clarification? No. Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacourt.
News. We've got the Cleaver Gardens money in for actually doing the roads and paths. Hopefully that will be done really well. It's the first time I ever put a council call for action in to try and chivvy up the process, which has been stalled for many years. So I'm really pleased it's got 360,000 from the Borough Council. I assume the county is producing a similar contribution. And we've got it marked up. The officers were there a couple of weeks ago marking where bits of pavement need drop curbs and etc. So I think that's a real positive thing. It's been long overdue, and it had a safety issue as well, because the roads there were getting particularly unsafe with the amount of damage from flooding and weather and winter. So The one issue I would say is we do need clarity on that if we're getting the lighting done, because the people marking up the roads didn't know if they're doing the lighting, and I don't want street lighting forgotten about, so we don't know who's taking responsibility for it until it goes wrong. On the less good side, as all the capital projects are being cancelled, the museum and things, these projects should actually have cost us something so far, so I don't know how that money's been written off for the bits we haven't done. And it's absolutely lunacy that we're carrying on with Bridge to Living without actually a proper review of what we're building. The Body Shop started closing shops yesterday. Yeah, we shouldn't be building more shops. Spending £8 million on building more shops does seem a silly thing to do, particularly when you look at the finances of the country and the council. So I would try and transfer some of that money to the museum, even if we do a small extension. And we've got this at the back page, Appendix 3, various bits of money from the Shared Prosperity Fund. 921,000, the last two items, is being given to businesses in a most untransparent way. I'd far rather some of that money being done clearing the river up, clearing the massive amount of fly tipping around what was Rowan Ringway, and some projects are actually to the more public realm. Giving almost £1 million to your friends in business, I want some transparency on that, because we're putting the council tax up so much, we've got so much rise in charges, and yet we don't really know what that £921,000 is going to do for the public.
Cool. Can you tell me what friends I have in business?
I don't know who you go to the pub with. All I know is you give business far more money than you give members of the public, and we're taxing the cemeteries and all sorts of things quite heavily.
So the answer about my friends, if you don't know who they are, how can you make your statement?
I know you're giving business £921,000 as a council, and we're talking about the council budget here,
Councillor
not your
Condacall, you
personal.
said my friends. You don't know who my friends are, you've just admitted. So will you retract your potentially libellous statement?
The council is run by the Conservatives, and the Conservatives have friends in business.
I think it's safe to say that what you know could be written on the back of a cigarette packet in that regard, Councillor Condacall. And I would refer you to paragraph 4.7 of the regeneration agenda item as well. Any other non-cabinet member? No? Any point that Cabinet wishes to come back on? In which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That moves us on to Treasury Strategy. Councillor Croft. Second that from the Chair. We don't have a public speaker on this item. Do we have any non-cabinet member wishing to speak? Councillor Condacall.
Chair, I always take an interest in this item. I've spoken on it since 2008, when the late leader Dennis Harvey, not he's late in terms of being dead, but no longer the leader, decided to put £3 million in Icelandic bank accounts. I'm really fascinated about the flow of money and how it all works, and I'm very, very concerned about the amount the council's going to borrow going forwards in this report. I'm very keen that we cut the borrowing down. I'm very keen that we look at how we reduce our risks, which is why I think the Treasury would be helped so much if we sold the hotel we're building. I believe the things we're building at our loan, at our cost effectively, is partly Bedworth Activity Centre and partly Grayson Place. A lot of the other stuff is grant funding, but a lot of our debt, which is then going into Treasury management, is Grayson Place and the some of the costs from the activity centre. So I really ask we look at selling the hotel and actually taking out 5-year public loan bonds. And if you look at the various charts, obviously they tell you how much interest rates will be if you take both for 5 years, 15, 20 on the public work bonds. So I do think we need to be smart about our debts, because we are getting into a danger. It doesn't generate the revenue in terms to then cover the interest payments. Thank you.
For Councillor Condacall? No. Any other non-cabinet member? No. In which case, will anyone from Cabinet wish to speak? No. We'll move to the vote then. Those in favour of the recommendations? That's carried. Thank you very much. That moves us to agenda item number 12, which is recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels. There are no other items that I've been made aware of. I am not moving agenda item number 14, which is exclusion of the public and press. Having discussed this with officers, I am content, and they are content, that the report can be taken in open session, and I believe it should be taken in open session, so that we can avoid some of the rumour mongering which goes on, and everyone can see it in black and white. I'm all right. Yeah. It's just you looked over and I thought, oh, have I said something that I shouldn't have done? Okay. So I will move the report at agenda item number 15, which is the regeneration update. It isn't a particular item on for council tonight, although it is related to that. So I would hope Councillor Condacor would be pleased with this report, seeing as he's asked numerous times for us to revise and reconsider various different elements of the regeneration. What we have done is take account of the changing face of the economy since these business cases were approved in 2018-19 and submitted to DLUC in 2020. I don't think anyone can say that the economy is in the same state it was during that period of time. And as times change, this council must be agile and adapt to the changing face of the economy. There are things that we would like to do now, but we can't. But we are rephasing our approach to regeneration, in particular at Grayson Place. So it does stay within the envelope of affordability, and we have been crystal clear on that with officers, that this must stay within the envelope of affordability and wherever possible generate an income, or the income actually covers the costs to the council. And we have done that. That has involved making some very difficult decisions. But we, on this side of the chamber, are not afraid to make the necessary and difficult decisions where it comes to the financial sustainability of this council. And I am pleased that we are actually able to go forward with a large chunk now of what we wanted to do when we took up the administration. Grayson Place will still be delivered with a hotel, a cinema and a food hall. We will still have the college relocating into the town centre. And I think it's also important to note that we have listened to feedback from residents about the car park. I know that residents are divided on that. Some people like multi-stories, some people don't. But we already have a range of multi-stories, so having listened to feedback and looking at our financial requirements, we believe that actually it is in the best interest of the council to pursue a surface car park at this time. And then the phase 3, as we are naming it, will become the residential element of Grayson Place, and residential was always forecast to be part of Grayson Place. It does mean that we will be carrying on with upgrades to Riversley Park. It does mean that a restructured and revised Bridge to Living project will go ahead, as it says at the paragraph I mentioned earlier, that it is going to be refocused to primarily residential, which means that we solidify our core of commercial shops in the town, in the core of the town centre, and critically, it means that we can go ahead with the Bedworth Leisure Centre, Bedworth Physical Activity Hub in the official parlance, but I still think of it as a leisure centre. And that means that we can deliver that game-changing project for the residents of Bedworth, which has, along with the rest of Nuneaton, there are 17 lower super output areas out in Warwickshire out of 22, and a number of those are in Bedworth. So the fact that we can actually still deliver that project against the face of the very challenging economic times that we have faced in these past 3 years, I think is testament to the hard work of cabinet members and officers in making sure that we can deliver this. So do I want to be sat here reading this? No. But I'd rather do this and have the entire scheme collapse, and that we deliver nothing for the residents, because I believe the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth actually deserve a better future and investment in their towns. So I will move that report, and I believe Councillor Crofty wished to second. I should point out that there is a typographical error, which has been corrected on a further addendum, that the hotel construction is now approaching completion with expected practical completion June 2024, not June 2025. That was a mistake when proofreading. I think most people can see it's actually almost complete anyway. We have one public speaker on this, which is Mrs. Condacor.
Thank you. I think some of the decisions and things, it's all a case of timing. I mean, on this report, it's about having a, what is it called, a local authority trading company to actually be sort of liaising with the management. And given that the hotel is sort of nearing completion, it seems quite late in the day to suddenly realise that that's actually what's required. And also some of these decisions, I mean, I'm not against sort of bits having been dropped, because I was against a lot of the sort of road schemes in the first instance, not all, but some. It should have been the decision should have been taken much sooner, before so much time and money has been invested into things. I'd also just like to ask, I don't actually know, what is visiting Nuneaton changing perspectives and what is the e-mobility hub, because those are not terms that I've come across before. They suddenly seem to have popped up in this report, so I don't know. No. And I've already mentioned the loss of funding, you know, from the schemes that aren't going ahead. That's a big concern.
Any points of clarification? The visiting Nuneaton thing, actually, none of us could work out what it was. It was something we inherited, and it's something that we have cancelled to put into something which is more of a priority for the council. And in terms of the e-mobility hub, that will be a series of electric charging points in a car park to actually aid with the increase in electric vehicles that we are seeing as part of the climate change agenda, and also helping with people's costs as well. So I hope that answers some of those questions. Any other non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacor.
Forward, we've got this in public session. I think it's very useful. It means the public can see what's going on for the first time. Now things are getting close to going forwards. And I think a lot of stuff on Grayson Place now looks a lot more like I would have suggested 3 years ago. The multi-storey car park was an abomination when you looked at the design. It was done on the cheap, and it had all sorts of design issues and would have cost a fortune to run. So I'm really pleased that's gone. We're going for surface car parking on Grayson Place. I understand we've got the cinema but not the soft play bouncy castle thing. That seemed to be a sensible commercial decision. And yeah, we should have taken these decisions 2 or 3 years ago. I've always been for development at a more sensible scale, particularly because no one else has put any money into Grayson Place other than ourselves. So to do it at a scale we can afford and to provide 1 or 2 things like the cinema, which you've chosen, hopefully a very good operator, is good. I'm also most disappointed you've only just started talking about the local council-run firm that runs the hotel. Stockton did this 3 or 4 years ago, probably 4 years ago. I've told you at meetings before you needed someone to be the operating firm for the hotel, which could either be the council arm's length company or there are actually facility management companies that do it for you. So I do hope you take a good look at why that decision wasn't taken earlier, and also structure it so we can actually sell this firm on if we want to divest ourselves of the hotel. At some point, we will take a loss in the value of the hotel, though, by going commercial, because if it costs us 24 million to build and it's worth 18 million, somewhere there has to be a £6 million adjustment in the accounts. And I'm most disappointed we've lost the museum upgrade. Thank you for your comments about Bridge to Living being less retail. I do ask, can we look at doing a health facility? If it, on the ground floor, we're desperately short of places to be like a health centre. The Nuneaton centre's packed out with people having their blood tests or whatever. So having a health element in the cut down Bridge to Living, I think, would be very helpful. And the location there